All right, so again, for those of you just joining, welcome and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Alexandria Emergency Support Grant Program. And we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so just a few housekeeping items before we get started. I just wanted to remind you all to please keep yourself on mute until we get to the Q&A session towards the end. However, throughout the meeting, please feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions or to share any comments throughout the session. And then another reminder that this session will be recorded and made available on the ACT website. And so you will be able to find this recording on the Emergency Support Grant Program website. And we will talk more about how to find that later in the session. Okay, so for our agenda for today, we're going to just start off sharing a little bit about ACT for Alexandria and who we are. And so after that, we'll go into the overview of the grant program and talk about some of the support that the Department of Community and Human Services is providing through this grant program. We'll talk a little bit about the funding conditions as a result of using federal funding, as this program is supported by ARPA funds, so the American Rescue Plan Act, and the allowable expenses for this funding. And so with that, we'll talk a little bit about the program and how it's being evaluated and the data collection involved, a bit about the application process. Then we'll go into the reporting requirements for the program, the grant timeline, and then close at the end with the Q&A session. So a bit about ACT for Alexandria. So ACT for Alexandria is a community foundation, and we seek to improve the lives of Alexandrians by turning ideas into action and resources into results. We connect with donors that are with causes that they're passionate about, and we also collaborate with nonprofits to optimize resources and their impacts. And so by listening to our community, it really helps us to learn and advocate for issues, to advocate for key issues to help develop solutions for Alexandria's most pressing challenges. And so one of the ways that we're hoping to continue this mission is by partnering with nonprofits through this grant program. And so recognizing that nonprofits have developed trusted relationships with community members, ACT is working in collaboration with the Department of Community and Human Services to ensure that ongoing community needs are met through the provision of tangible aid for Alexandrians. And so in just a moment, I'm going to pass it along to Debbie Anderson, who is the project manager that we are partnered with through DCHS for this program. And then she will just share a bit more information about the specifics for the Emergency Support Grant Program. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Debbie.
Thank you, Aaliyah. But before getting started, I have two colleagues that are new to this screen that I want to introduce to you all. As a matter of fact, I haven't met one of them, so this is my first time meeting her, but I want you to welcome Melissa Jensen, who is our new food security coordinator to this meeting. Welcome, Melissa, and you'll be hearing more about Melissa's role as we continue to progress in another government-funded project that we have. And then I am extremely excited to welcome Federico Gutierrez, who is our new deputy director. Federico is, 3 days new on the job? I think Melissa's probably a couple of weeks new on the job, but Federico is 3 days new on the job. And so I want you all to welcome him as well. We're excited about both of them joining our team. And so they are hitting the ground running, just kind of understanding what it is we're doing with ARPA dollars, American Rescue Fund Plan Act dollars. The Community Access and Emergency Support Grant Program is one of 7 that the department is running with American Rescue Plan Act money. And today we're here to talk to you about grant opportunities that will help us continue to meet the ongoing tangible aid needs that our residents are experiencing. And this federal money is very specific about the kind of tangible aid that we can use the dollars for. And so you'll be hearing more about what those categories are. It's a little more generous in terms of being able to charge administrative costs. If you partner with us during the CARES Act funding, that was not an opportunity that we had with the CARES Act funding. So there is an opportunity to charge some administrative costs to making this happen. But we are just extremely excited about this program because what we have learned, if nothing else, is that the need continues in our community across the board. And so we're here to talk about the second round. This is the second round of, we made a deliberate decision to chunk this money into funding cycles. And so you're here to hear about the second opportunity to apply for the funding. Some of you all are here. Here are already using some of the dollars awarded in the first round, and there's nothing that would necessarily preclude you from being a recipient of the second round. What we don't have on the screen is the cap has not changed. So we're funding grant award requests up to $65,000. And this money will be used for the period covering December 1, 2022 through May 31, 2023. It's meant to support, this is always gets a little fuzzy, but it's meant to support Alexandria proper residents. So those are people who are making requests of you that live within the geographic limitations of the city of Alexandria. Randy did. Oh, okay. You want me to talk about part two? And Brandy did. I mean, Aaliyah did talk about support that will be coming through the department, and we will also, in addition to what we funded through the community access portion of these funds, intend to hire 2 service navigators that Melissa will have the pleasure of supervising. I'm not sure where we are in the hiring process. Takes a little longer for us to hire staff in the city than it does on the nonprofit side. That was a major adjustment for me coming from the nonprofit world to the city world. So we are in a hiring process, but we will have 2 internal service navigators that will help our external service navigators connect families to our services within DCHS, and also help us understand where we are having some difficulties with those connections. And so one of the outcomes of that pot of money will to also look at system changes for us. You know, what is it that we can fix internally, or what we would have to do from a higher level going to the state and talking about barriers that our residents are experiencing as they approach us for services. So that's pretty much where we are. Am I going to go through the eligibility requirements? Okay. So first and foremost, we're looking for applications from 501c3 nonprofits, and we'll be asking you to evidence that. And we're looking for organizations that will be willing to deliver services to community residents that may be outside of your client group. So some of you have very distinct client groups, but as we're looking for you to partner with us across the city. So as needs are being made aware, that you will also be able to service those needs as well. And these are I talked about the spending categories. So these are the spending categories that funds can be used for to address medical expenses, food needs, to help with rent, mortgage, and utility, cash assistance to unemployed workers, eviction assistance, job training assistance, and other economic support that you're going to define what that looks like in your grant application. Okay. Let me just stop and make sure that there are no questions, because I'm throwing a lot at you guys. So if Brandy and Ali, if you're okay with just maybe letting us take a breath and see if we have questions so far.
Sure.
Sorry, just a quick question. Can we please go back to the previous slide? I just missed like the last note.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you.
Huh?
Okay, we're good.
Okay, so this is federal money, and we will have reporting requirements that are a little more stringent than what some may be accustomed to if you've been recipients of general operating dollars from the city. But we're asking that you be in a position to submit reports on a quarterly basis to talk about specifically how the funds were used in the categories that you saw in the previous screen. We are being required to understand the fiscal stability of organizations that we fund in advance of awarding the funds. So if you have not received any opera funds before, or any pot of money from this pot, you will be required to do a subrecipient checklist and go through a debarment process. And the checklist really helps us understand the fiscal stability of your organization. If you've complied with auditing requirements, if you've complied with your 1099 requirements, how you're tracking your federal dollars. And it is a link that you'll be guided to complete. Then once you've successfully done that, we will do our internal team, fiscal team will send your organization through a debarment checklist. And that is to make sure that you are in good standing with the state and the federal government should you have received federal or state dollars before. Grantees are expected to attend all of the city-sponsored meetings and trainings that are required by this fund and by ACT, who is our grant administrator. And then lastly, again, another prerequisite for funding is participating in a fraud and ITS security training. And it's a video, tops, I think it's, refresh my memory, Aaliyah, about 45 minutes to go through both, and you set a test that you've gone through those trainings, and we get a notification. And then you're pretty much ready to go in terms of getting your award from ACT and beginning the service, being in a position to service and respond to requests by December. Let me also say that we are being very intentional about using this opportunity as a listening and learning opportunity. So, I mean, this is probably going to be the most that you'll hear me or ACT staff members talk. Moving forward, all of the convenings will be listening sessions where we want to hear from you. So we're not only going to rely on your written reports to ACT, but we also want immediate feedback. And so you'll get a schedule of listening sessions where you'll be working not only with the ACT staff, but you'll also be working with an external evaluator that's been hired to support this work. So we are very intentional about hearing from you what you're seeing and what you're being asked of out in the field. So I think that is it for me.
Yes, thank you so much, Debbie. Yeah, and to just carry on from what Debbie was just explaining is about this evaluation side of the grant program. And so our overarching goal for the program is to make sure that community members are connected to the resources and supports that they need to thrive. And so what we're hoping to learn through an evaluation is just a bit more about how community members are being connected to resources and the types of services that they're seeking. We're also hoping to learn and increase our understanding of what enhances people to access services. Through this program, we're hoping that it'll help strengthen our partnerships with the community, whether that's the nonprofit partnerships or even just with the community individuals, and then also with Alexandria's social services sector as well. So we're hoping that those partnerships are strengthened through this program. And then also just an improved understanding of recommendations through system reform as a whole through this program. And so one of the ways that we're doing that is we will be hosting convenings with the emergency support grantees for a chance for the community members to share ideas and successes and challenges that they're seeing, and to really help broaden our understanding of what they're seeing on an everyday basis and trends, and really looking at the data that we'll be receiving through this data collection to learn more about, what the community is experiencing. And so our evaluation partners includes Alexandria's Office of Performance Analytics. And so Catherine Key from the Department of Community and Human Services will be working with us on that. And then also Elizabeth Grimm Consulting LLC is our other partner for this evaluation. And so some of the data that we'll be asking for our grantees to track includes the bullet points below. And so that might include the type of applicant or potentially the referral source or the type of service that they need. And so kind of similar to the last slide, we just want to learn more about the services that are being provided to the grantees, what they're looking for, or even potentially the amount of financial assistance to really get a broader view of what's happening. So that's all for that. Okay, and so moving on to how you apply for this grant program. And so this application will be done through Foundant, which is ACT's grant management system. And you can find Foundant by going to the link listed above, or you can also go to the ACT's website and also click on that emergency support program page, and there will be a link at the bottom for a direct link to this website. And so when you go to Foundant, which again is this www.grantinterface.com link, it'll ask you or it'll walk you through a process to create a new account. And then once you've created that account with your organization, then it'll give you the option to apply specifically to the Alexandria Emergency Support Grant Program application. And so on the application itself, I just wanted to give you an example question that was pulled directly from the application. And so one of those questions includes, briefly describe how the funds will be used, how you determine these needs, the number of Alexandrians you anticipate serving, the population you intend on serving, and a proposed timeline for the use of funds. And then on the application, there will also be an attestation at the bottom. And this is just to remind grantees that they will be required to just keep adequate records for at least 5 years with this grant funding. And so we also wanted to make sure to add that to the application. Okay, so a grant timeline for this grant program is listed here. So grant applications open today. They're actually available right now. So again, if you go to the ACT website, you can have a link for that. Grant applications will be open for 3 weeks, and so they will be due on September 29th. Applications will be reviewed during the beginning of October, with award decisions announced late October. And then agreements will be signed around the beginning of November, with funding issued around mid to late November. And so I wanted to also highlight that the grant period for this funding is 6 months, as previously stated. And so it'll go from December 1st of 2022 all the way through May 31st of 2023. All right, and so for any assistance or questions related to this grant program, or even with Foundant, our grant management system, please feel free to contact me. My email is listed here on the slide. I can also add my email to the chat as well. And then for more information about the emergency support grant as a whole, you can visit our website, actforalexandria.org, and look for that emergency support grant program page again. All right. And so that's the end of the session. I wanted to leave some time for Q&A. So we are going to move into that segment now.
I have a quick question. Sorry, excuse me. Hi, everyone. This is Salsa Prom from African Communities Together. I have a quick question, and this actually kind of relates to the research that you all are doing, just to see like what exactly are the barriers for certain groups in accessing these types of assistance programs. I am wondering, do you know if recipients of this type of assistance have to worry about the public charge rule? Like, is this assistance going to be counted as public assistance in terms of determining whether or not an immigrant is eligible for LPR status, basically. And if people aren't familiar with the public charge rule, I can kind of go into a quick explanation about what that is, if that will help make this question a little clearer. Yeah, okay. So essentially the public charge rule is a rule that was instituted, I believe in like the 90s, maybe, or maybe a little earlier, that basically states that if an immigrant seeking lawful permanent residency status is in search, like applies for that, right, or applies to be sponsored, essentially the government can review, can basically review the public assistance that they've received in order to determine whether or not the immigrant would become a public charge, meaning would they have to be too heavily reliant on the government for assistance. And essentially they look at public assistance being given under the Trump administration. They had expanded it to include like recipients of Medicaid. Fortunately, that was recently taken out when the Biden administration came into view. And so I say all this to say that the immigrant community that we serve is a little concerned about applying for some of these assistance programs because they don't know if that's going to somehow hinder them when they try and file for like a green card or some type of lawful permanent residency status. So I'm wondering if the Acts for Alexandria team knows if this would count as public assistance under the public charge rule, since it's federal money.
We've not been challenged with that just yet, but I do have Esperita on the line, and Esperita may be able to give us a little bit more about how this might impact. What we're hoping is that the assistance that you're providing is not necessarily ending up in the hand of the recipient, but it's going to, if it's rental assistance that you're providing, that it's going directly to the landlord. If it is assistance for a training program, that you're giving that money directly to the provider of the training. So I can think of maybe one or two instances where they would actually get the money in hand. If you are a program that's going to step out on the cash assistance for unemployed, then we've got to talk a little bit more with you about the mechanisms around that. And if you're looking to provide grocery gift cards, heretofore that has not counted. But I'll let Esperita, this is more in her wheelhouse, talk a little bit more about how this COVID money is being looked at. And I don't mean to put Esperita on the spot because we may have to dig a little bit more. This is the first time it's come up to us. It's not been an issue through the CARES funding that we've had. And this is the first time it's been brought to our attention with the opera money.
I can just add a little relating to the public charge rule. They do specify the programs that the public charge rule impacts. I'd have to read it over just a little bit to give you more detail. Haven't looked at it in some time, but as was mentioned, since the Biden administration came in office, they have reversed some of the impacts that the Trump administration had relating to the public charge rule and the various programs, that individuals receive. But we can, certainly pull that public charge information up. We actually have it on our DCHS website. So I can, try to take a look, but I haven't read it in a little while now.
And Brandy and Aaliyah, what I will do is go back to the final rule of opera dollars and see if there's a section on public charge as well. It had not been an issue before, but the final rule will cover all of the impacts of this funding across the board. So once we get a response, we'll try to get something back to you guys so you can put it up on your Q&A as soon as possible.
All right, great. Thank you all so much.
Great, thank you so much. I'm just going to take a quick second to look at the chat to see if any questions have come in. Okay, it looks like a majority of the questions in the chat have been answered in the chat. So if there are any additional questions from this group, if you'd like to unmute and ask, please feel free to do so.
While we're waiting on questions, for those who are on the line who are recipients of first round funding, they already know that there are prerequisites to getting the funding, and we went through them. And so one prerequisite is your completion of your subrecipient checklist, completion of the debarment process, and then completion of the videos for fraud and ITS training. So it's the sooner you do those, the sooner you'll be putting ACT in a position to release your funds. The longer you take to get those things done, the longer it takes for ACT to position you for receipt of funds if your application is accepted. So I encourage you that if you get word from ACT that you've been approved, to quickly go through those 3 steps. Again, if you're a current recipient, you don't have to complete the subrecipient checklist again, and you don't have to go through the debarment process again. But if you are assigning new staff in this second round that did not go through the ITS and the fraud training, you'll have to do that. So, but if you've done it before, nothing changes in the terms of the key staff supporting it. You won't have to go through those 3 steps, and ACT is already aware that you've completed those steps.
So Debbie, you kind of pretty much already like answered the question that I had, but is it, just to make sure, is it safe to assume that there are no additional requirements in this second round that differ from if you were like a first round recipient? Everything pretty much stays the same? Not from
the federal perspective. So we do,
okay.
Unlike the CARES Act, they were very careful to put all of the requirements up front in the act. Those of you all who rode with us on CARES money, we were getting new changes all along the way. So everything has been pretty set since the city got its opera funding award. So it's those 3 federal prerequisites that we're concerned about as their pre-award, I'm getting tongue-tied, prerequisites, and then ACT will then in your agreement, you will see the other things that we're locally requiring you to do, which we briefly ran over today. So nothing has changed in terms of requirements from the round 1.
This is Olivia Mitchner.
Hey, Olivia.
Hi, family to family at the Old Presbyterian Meeting House. Let me see, I'll get on here. I am about to leave on a pandemic delayed trip and will not be back until September 20th. And so my question is, can I sort of resubmit what I submitted for the first round grant, or is this going to be a very different question or process or form? Maybe that's the question.
Hi, Olivia, great to see you.
Hi.
So on the application, you'll see there are a couple of questions that asks if you're a new applicant or if you were a previous applicant of the grant program. And then based on that response, there will be 2 separate applications. And so you'll see the questions that are listed there that you'll need to answer as a returning applicant.
Okay.
And so yes, they're a little bit different, but you'll see just familiarity with what you've seen in the past.
Okay, and again, to clarify the date when it's due, 30th?
So they will be due on September 29th.
29th. Okay, I'm going to be very busy when I get back. All right.
Thank you for your question. Yeah. So I wanted to thank everybody so much for joining. I know we're at the end of the information session, but I did want to remind you that if you have a question or think of a question after the session that you wanted to ask and need an answer for, please feel free to reach out to me at my email, and I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us today.